I am often asked about Iran and what happened in 1979, whether people actually chose the Islamic Republic, especially now when there is a revolution in Iran. There are a lot of information to unfold, but I want to give you some hints and comparisons between then and now. Things that you probably haven't seen because the media doesn't want you to see it. So every details help you to understand the political and geopolitical situation, not just in Iran, but the world. First, I have to clarify something very important. We Iranians are not Muslims. And historically, we have never been Muslims. And we cannot be. If you read through the history of Iran, we have been invaded by Muslims. And for example, in the bloody Qadisiyeh war, Muslims killed many Iranians. They killed enough Iranians that they could run a windmill for 3 days in a row with the blood of Iranians to make bread. It's all documented and have references from the old books. So the history of Iran is eye-opening. I recommend everyone to read this book, for example. The other thing is that Iranians are also sensitive about using the word Iran for this regime because they are Islamic Republic, the occupiers of Iran. And in fact, none of them are from Iran. The Islamic Supreme Leader Khamenei is from Iraq. Former Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Shamkhani, is also from Iraq. Former Chief Nuclear Negotiator Jalili is from Afghanistan. Khomeini is from India. A former commander of IRGC Air Force, Chief of the Police, Ghalibaf, is from Uzbekistan. So literally none of them are Iranians. So calling them Iran breaks our heart because they are the occupiers of our country. And we have been fighting to take back our country for years. This is also important in the political level. When you call a brutal regime that has been sanctioned and has done many terrorist activities Iran, later when Iran is free, all of this is recorded in the name of Iran. While they are not Iran, they are Islamic Republic, the occupiers of Iran. But back in 1979, and the Shah of Iran, and whether people loved him or not, there is one simple point that matters. If you look at Iran before 1979, the footage tells you the story. The Shah walked freely among people without security in villages and rural areas. People treated him with respect. People appreciated what he did. For example, in this video, when the Shah gave farmers back their farmland documents taken from the chieftain of the village, the man walks around him as a sign of respect. And in Persian we say "Doret begardan." It's a poetic way of showing love and appreciation. But also there are many reasons that Iranian people love the Shah. For a steady inflation, valid and respectable passport, free education, and lots of opportunities and grants for students to study abroad, the valuable currency, and overall being a respectable nation in the world. And as I said, the history is the best judge. Iran with Shah was the progressive country that found its way to the greatness after the darkness of the Qajar, the darkness that brought by Britain, along with the promotion of Islamic Shia. But of course, back in 1979, there were also unhappy people, and all of them had the ideology of Islamic Marxism. They tried multiple times to assassinate the Shah, betrayed the country over and over, and the people like Gul Sorkhi, an Islamic Marxist activist that the anti-Shah movement have created a scent from him, or other top Islamic Republic leaders, were the enemy of the Shah. And Shah was criticized for stopping these Islamic Marxists or other top Islamic Republic leaders who were in Savak's prison, the Iran's secret police. But of course they had a strong support from US and Britain. You may recognize some of these faces who slaughtered Iranians for years after they were released from the prison. And even Savak warned Iranians and the world that if Savak is dissolved, the terrorists will take over Iran. And that's exactly what happened. This is Khamenei, the Islamic Supreme Leader, Rafsanjani, another Islamic Republic version that they call themselves reformists. And I have to point out that the whole movement of women life freedom comes from his followers, the movement that fooled the world back in 2019 and completely distracted the will of Iranians. And of course, they bought out also your politicians. So a madness started in the world, a big fake show of politicians cutting their hair as a sign of solidarity with Iranian people. They generalized our revolution. Of course, because they are the reformists of Islamic Republic. And the thing is that the difference between reformists and Islamic Republic is the different color of a robe for execution. And I tell you, as an Iranian, that was the most shameful and disappointing behavior from the leaders of the Western countries. And of course, we protested, but we didn't have the media. Moving on, I just wanted to point out what evils we are dealing with. And all of these other terrorists in this image that had, and some of them still have, a voice till now in social media. For example, Ziba Kalam, another mix of Islam and left, the spokesperson of Islamic Republic, that again many of Western politicians quote him. And the most horrifying group in this list is the MEK ORG, the communist terrorist group run by Rajavi. And they have the international support of your politicians that later in this video I introduce some of them. But all of these terrorists were released in 1979 by the so-called World Human Rights Movement, that now it's fair to call them the terrorist rights movement. And I tell you next how these criminals actually took over the power. The media and international organizations say there was a referendum and the people of Iran chose the Islamic Republic. But this is not true. It's beyond obvious. Here is how it really happened. First of all, there was an international push to release these terrorists from prison, which is a very shameful act on the world scale. And the Shah was accused of violating human rights, a campaign orchestrated by Carter and the CIA, fueled by massive propaganda from popular media outlets, top reporters, and even university professors who published articles praising how amazing are these terrorists. For example, this article published in New York Times back in 1979, written by an American professor of international law at Princeton University. I'm wondering if anybody make them accountable now. It's important for everyone to know who these people are. These terrorism and criminal ideologies at top universities. And you might think that universities are the safe environment, while it can lead students into dangerous ideologies like Marxism or liberalism. There are also evidence from British media, the BBC News, that in Iran, we call it Ayatollah BBC, sent images and speeches of Khomeini to Iran. And it shows how coordinated this campaign was to overturn Iran. Here's also a clear message from McCarthy.
Pahlavi dynasty has to go. There's no choice, in my opinion. We don't want that government. Now, that's a message to the whole world, and especially the influential countries, including Britain, the United States, and, of course, Iran.
Max McCarthy worked in the U.S. Embassy. The Shah dreamed of a new Iran.
And also Carter sent General Heiser to warn the Shah or threaten the Shah of Iran to leave the country. Otherwise, he won't see his son again, his son who was studying in the US at that time. So with the massive propaganda campaigns from the US and British news, bombarding Iranians with anti-Shah messages and fooling people by complimenting Khomeini, the Shah had no choice but to leave. Of course, he didn't leave because of the threats to his son's life, but he left because when Khomeini's armed terrorists entered Iran, they terrorized people, burned cities, killed people to scare the majority into silence. Here's the exact words of Khomeini to his followers.
اقتصادش را فلج کنید، ندید مالیات بهش، پول آب و برق ندید، چیزای دیگر رو که میخوان ندید، زیر بار برید و تظاهرات بکنید و راهپیمایی بکنید، محکوم کنید او را. نمیتوند با یه ملت طرف بشه. من میدانم که همه دل خون دارن از این حکومت. شما از پشت خنجر بهش بزنید، قیام کنید، اعتصاب کنید، راهپیمایی کنید برای خلافش. مگه میتونه قتل عام بکنه؟
And Carter didn't seem to care, or it was the US Democrat standard of human rights. So what he says exactly happened. The Khomeini's terrorists followed his violent advice. They were anti-Shah, stormed the streets, killed the Shah supporters. And the Shah was also under the lens of the global human rights and couldn't do any wrong move. Here's the reason why the Shah of Iran left in his own words.
In 50 years' time, how will future Iranians judge you?
50 years, I hope it will be sooner than that.
Well, whenever, I was saying, how will your people, after a period, judge you?
Well, if they read history, they will see what it was before my father, what it was when I took over, and what it was when I left.
Do you feel that your people let you down, or that you let your people down?
First of all, when we say the people, we cannot talk about all the people. That's absolutely not true. I can say that the silent majority remained silent. And if I let my people down, it was for the purpose that I tried to explain, that a king cannot be a dictator and that a throne could not be based on blood.
And as the Shah said, the silent majority remained silent. Looking at the footage from these terrorists who invaded Iran and killed everybody on their way, it's difficult to judge the situation now. But according to Carter administration, these terrorists were peaceful. And look how peaceful they are, praying peacefully with their guns in the street, covering their faces with the sign of Khomeini and the Mek terrorist. And I'm shocked that how this was even acceptable at that time. There are also many footages of Iranians actually protested against the Islamic Republic in 1979. They were crying in the streets because they knew what's going to happen to Iran. Of course, the media had to hide it. Here's another interview that a woman says clearly what's really happening, and another woman crying that she wants Shah.
That's right, and most of the people don't say anything because they are afraid, and they are in silence, you know, they don't say anything.
Is this the silent majority of Iran out here now?
Yes, that's right.
Do you want the Shah to return?
Yes, Shah, I said to the country.
Why do you want the Shah? Why does she want the
Many of these people in these videos were either got shot or after was executed brutally. And when I say brutally, I mean they even executed teenagers under 18. And according to Sharia, because they are underage and shouldn't be executed unless they use their virginity, these Islamists raped them and then executed them. And for those who were shot, these terrorists went door to door and collected the money for the bullets. The magnitude of the executions in Iran at that time is heartbreaking. It was a clear violation of human rights, if not genocide. And one day all these statistics will be revealed. So while these terrorists were busy silencing people, the US and British ambassadors were praying behind the Ayatollah Montazeri, another terrorist in that image released from the prison. Or here, this is Sergeant Graham, the British ambassador, who touches the Khomeini's hand and give it back to people. And Iranian patriots were completely ignored. And America was so happy with the result of this invasion that they burned our flag, the flag of Iran, in their national TV.
But it's an Iranian flag, and anybody from Iran in this country doesn't like it should leave.
Deb, we'll be right back.
And I have to note that Iranian people never stepped on any flag. This is the entrance of the university in Iran. These college students don't step on the US flag. And there are more videos of these flags in the streets, and Iranian people just don't step on these flags. Or in this video, when US and British helped install these terrorists, they sent their agents to Iran to make sure that the top elites, the country's intellectual, military, and political capital, were executed successfully. The trained military officers, generals, and members of parliament were executed. They were the treasure of Iran.
General Naji. This one here? Naji. General Naji. C'est General Khosrow Dad. Just two. Nasiri, General Nasiri, Minister of the Savak. This one. The one that they're going to thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you guys have any particularly strong feelings one way or the other about Iran on your way out?
Nothing strong, no. We're very sorry for what happened here.
Would you come back?
Sure.
Yes.
You bet.
We've met some very fine people over inside here. And
just one of these things.
Would you like to stay now? I think possibly I'd like to see the situation clarified a little bit more. You know where you're going today? Going on an airplane.
That's it.
They tell you where you're going to get off?
When she sets down.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Everybody does.
And even the poor maid working in Shah Palace was beaten and burnt alive, and these terrorists were cheering around her body in the street. This specifically was done by a criminal who later became a top IRGC officer, Salami. You probably have seen him threatening the EU. But these are also the same people that European Union still refuses to put them in the terror list. Well, with the scene that I show you next, it kind of makes sense. First of all, Khomeini stayed in France, and everything was coordinated when Air France escorted him to Iran. But here's one of their meetings. Do they look peaceful? It is quite horrifying. And I have a question. Would you accept these peacemakers to come to your country? These groups are backed by US, CIA, and some European countries like France, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, and of course Britain. This is the Satanic group we have been dealing with for 47 years. But this master plan didn't end there. After sending all these terrorists, Carter and CIA made sure that Khomeini stays in power by manufacturing a war between Iran and Iraq. And of course, this terrorist organization, Make Terrorist ORG, joined forces with Saddam and slaughtered Iranians for 8 years. And this is a tiny bit of the footage of what they did to Iranians. Just shows the end of humanity. If you compare it with the gas chamber, it becomes a dream. Just Google what happened to Iranian soldiers during that war. It blows your mind. And all these forces invaded Iran using all sorts of weapons, including chemical weapons provided by Germany, the tank provided by British, AK-4 by Russia, and so on, to make sure that Iran loses all its power. And this is a heartbreaking scene of Mojahedin, or Meg terrorists. The red and pink scarf evils killed these children by throwing them in a collective grave. And I have to emphasize again, your politicians interact with these evils. And I'm wondering if they also support this image? After creating all these crises for Iran, they could stop people's uprising against the Islamic Republic because Iran was under attack and the separatists wanted to cut Iran into pieces. So during these years, Iran's wealth were looted and divided among the invaders. British and French museums were filled. Swiss banks froze Iran's money, and all traces of what was owned by Iran and they owed to Iran were erased, such as all the loans that the Shah gave to European countries. With all these crises and attacks, Iranian people didn't even have time to process what was happening, and more than 10 years passed after the Islamic Republic invasion. But here's the Boris Johnson reveals now that proves why these terrorists were sent to Iran and against whom were Iranians fighting.
The truth is the Iranians had a case against us.
Which case?
Which was to do with a debt for some tanks that we had sold the Shah of Iran in 1979.
Before the revolution?
So it's complicated, but before the revolution, the Brits had sold the Shah a load of chieftain tanks, which were a big type of British tank. And I think the total, and the Iranians, the Shah of Iran paid for those tanks, I think for like £400 million. I mean, a lot of money.
But the British, they didn't submit.
But the British didn't deliver the tanks. So but the Shah then got deposed, and the tanks never arrived. And I think some of the tanks we then sold to other people, like I think even Saddam Hussein got some of them. So it was a classic. We talked about the British in Libya
and Libya.
So I'm just giving you an example. So the point was that we owed the money for the tanks. Okay, we really did, and we had the money
and the tanks.
And the tanks. Well, we sold the tanks.
Yeah, I know, but physically.
So we had the money. We sold the same. We sold the same camel twice. Is a typical British maneuver. It's like we did with like we did with Palestine. You know, anyway, it's another matter.
Okay.
But the result was that we had a moral case.
And while all these disasters happening, the Shah of Iran was also murdered by his doctor. Many say that it was a medical error, but the fact that they hid the truth shows their intent to cover up a crime. If you also look into this Lebanese doctor background and his unethical medical records, it's hard to believe that it was a medical error, and he did everything he could to save the most important person for Iran and for the world. Regardless, we Iranian people never stopped fighting against this evil regime. We have never accepted them. We protested years after years. This is a footage as an example from 1994. When I say every day in Iran is a massacre, it's not exaggeration. I'm quoting the history and the reality of what really has been happening to Iranians for years after the Islamic Republic took over. I want to warn you that this is a sensitive content. In this video, the IRGC invaded the dorms where students were protesting against the Islamic Republic. And by the order of the former military commander, the hands of these students were tied up and were thrown from the roof. This is just one scene of the horror under the Islamic regime. I don't go into the details of the disturbing stories of what has been happening to women and men in the prison, but I quote what Behnam Mahjoubi said, a young patriot sacrificed his life for Iran. He says, in prison, you see the end of humanity. And of course, you're not supposed to see this in the media, but generations of Iranian people have been fighting for a free Iran, and everyone in the world stood against us. And I'm sharing this because it keeps happening again and again, and also right now. And your politicians and some of the university professors, along with the news outlets, are promoting these Islamic Marxism, make terrorists, and the idea of the unholy alliance of black and red. And if you understand your politicians and whom they support, it also helps us. Because, for example, in 2019, when the Islamic regime killed at least over 4,000 of Iranians in 3 days, not only the media was silent, but when things went out of their control, they reported that the regime killed 1,500 Iranians. And the Biden administration even lowered that number to 304. And my question is, okay, you lower the number, but is it okay for a government to kill the peaceful protesters, even one person? But even worse than that, the second day that Biden took office, he urged South Korea to give Iranian people's seized money to Islamic Republic. And the willingness to support Islamic Republic is just unacceptable. And I want to point out that at that time, thanks to President Trump, Islamic Republic was so weak, they had no money, and their top general, Soleimani, who used Yemen to launder money and fund the Islamic terrorists, was assassinated. But well, this is not the first time that US Democrats act as a savior of this regime. Or in 2016, the regime godfather, Hossein Obama, also sent money to Islamic Republic with the excuse of releasing the hostages, while the money was beyond what was needed, and his explanation was that we owed them some money. You can search the title and listen to his speech yourself, or hear what they did. They removed this terrorist organization that has become a hidden political party of the US, removed from the terror list. And shockingly, you see they have meetings and interact with them openly, while they are not Iranians and have zero credibility among Iranian people. and we actually want the world justice to punish them for what they did to Iranians, even before the Ayatollah regime. But that says a lot about the US Democrats, following the Carter legacy and support the terrorism and Muslim Brotherhood. But now it's been over 10 days that Iranians have shown something very clear. They are united and they want only one thing, which is a free Iran and returning the Shah of Iran. All footages and videos from every city in Iran confirms that. And in the past 2 days, people of Iran said it louder and clearer than ever that they don't want any piece of this evil octopus. The Islamic Republic, the Mek terrorist organization, the separatists, and the so-called reformists, Carter, US Democrats, or even Mossad sometimes when they promote the separatists, and all the other terrorists released back in 1979. This is historic. 90 million people are united under the leadership of the Shah of Iran, His Majesty Reza Pahlavi, and we only want free Iran with restoring Pahlavi dynasty. We are overthrowing this Islamic regime and all its dependencies without any foreign help or interference by now. But we need help because the media is silent. All these human rights activists are silent, and something suspicious and creepy is happening among your politicians. You know these faces. Read about these Mek terrorist organization. They have been collaborating with the former Republicans who also betrayed Trump, with the Irish MP, with David Jones from British Parliament, with Tom Cotton, and all other former Republicans who are now called neocons. All of them support these terrorists. Of course, it's not only British and Americans, it's also the Dutch politicians. For example, Sigrid Kaag from the pro-Islam D66, wearing the hijab, that many Iranians were imprisoned, were beaten to death, and executed for refusing it. We need your help by paying more attention to your politics, see their reactions and what they do, seek the truth, and spread the words for us. Because we live in a world that we cannot trust anybody. Because most recently, a Mek terrorist podcaster revealed his true face. Patrick Bett, in a very childish and irrelevant post, attacked Iranians and our leader, the Shah of Iran, apart from the fact that he is not even an Iranian, and his parents were, and it seems, are still part of this terrorist group, Mek. He dared to address the Shah and said he is not a good leader and no one wants him. This is shameful to say when Iranian people are being killed for wanting a free Iran and for calling the Shah of Iran. But then he also offended Iranian people and said that Iranians are happy to accept this cheap food supply offered by Islamic Republic to bribe them and send them home. Then he went further and said Iranian people want another 47 years of oppression. What they should do is, instead of being dramatic, learn about Trump election campaign and how he won. I'm sure that he was drunk with some Mek terrorist funds or his family's legacy, I don't know. Because how a person like what he claims to be doesn't know that a revolution against a criminal Islamic Marxist mafia is different from an election campaign. But well, Iranian people also quickly showed him that it's all about taking back our country. And here's the scene of Iranian people emptying the IRGC store and do not take anything from the food supplies. And in the street, they made it clear that we want Iran back. This is not the revolution of hungry people, or it's not about the revolution against the mandatory hijab. This is not the revolution of genders or any leftist propaganda. We want our country back. We want our identity back, which is the kingdom of Iran. That is our identity. What's alarming is that Patrick Bett later openly revealed that he is connected to these terrorist organizations. You can search in his posts on X and see it yourself. I just see this as what the delusion of having followers on social media does to people. They think they know about everything, and they have opinions about the complex politics of a country with over 3,000 years of history. And these people lead the narratives. And it couldn't be worse. This week, Carson and also Kerry showed their true colors. She appointed a pro-Islamic Republic reformist, Ali Javanmardi, to the head of VOA. And I don't need to talk about Tucker Carlson. I think by now it's obvious for everybody who he is, especially after that fake interview with the president of Islamic Republic a couple of months ago. And now he is openly a spokesperson for the Islamic regime, while Iranian people has no voice because they shut down the internet. At the end, my point is that all these media outlets are pro-Islamic Republic. The New York Times and their Islamic Republic reporter, Farnas Fasihi. Or International, that runs by Saudi Arabia. They all promote this Meg terrorist ORG and the Islamic Republic, the two groups that are complementary piece of the unholy alliance of the red and black. And I want you to know that there are two Free Iran rally. One comes from the Iranian people, and they have already made their minds. They know what they want. They communicated to the whole world loud and clear. They want free Iran, and they want to restore the Pahlavi dynasty, the rightful and legitimate Shah of Iran. Our Shah never resigned. People know it, and we want to return our Shah. But there is another Free Iran rally that comes from these terrorists. They are backed by media and by your politicians. And you help us massively if you can distinguish this and do not follow these skewed narratives. Because I think we as citizens are powerful together and we can end this endless terrorism. I also believe that there is no running away from them. It will knock your door, as I see that we are kicking them out from our country and they are already in Europe and US. At the end, I want to ask you again, please share the footage that comes directly from Iran and the Shah of Iran, because what in the protests people demand is only the Shah. And also any claim, any arguments in this video is backed by information and evidence that I can provide upon your request. Thanks for listening.